You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 671 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. That song you're hearing right now is, of course, Leave the Lights On from our good friends in Passafire. You can check those guys out anywhere you get your music. And today, we've got Ranger training camp underway. It just feels awesome to be able to say that out loud. I know you guys are really excited as well as we gear up for the start of the preseason and ultimately the regular season as well. Today, I figure, obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about the training camp. We're also going to talk about early line combinations, which is always a popular subject to debate among Ranger fans, really among hockey fans in general, but I think us Ranger fans tend to really kind of hone in on those line combos, and everybody's got their preferred combinations, and why is this guy here, and maybe this guy should be there, so we're going to talk about all that. And we'll start there, and like I said, we'll work our way to the training camp, which also included a scrimmage today. And just for frame of reference, today is Thursday as I'm recording this. So, line combinations. The Rangers went with an interesting top nine. You had Mika centering the top line, Kreider on the left wing, and Sammy Blais on the right wing. Gallant revealed this to the media, and naturally, a lot of us have opinions on it, all these different line combinations. The second line combo was Vincent Trocheck centering Panarin on the left wing, Vitali Kravtsov on the right wing, and then the third line, he decided to, at least for the time being, keep the kids together. You got Filip Chytil at center, Alexis Lafreniere on the left wing, Kaapo Kakko on the right wing. So, a lot to kind of unpack here. For starters, I want to take you guys back just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, really, it's been going on over the past several weeks. We did our best and worst case scenarios for every single player on the team, and that series is now wrapped up. But I had a top six that I threw out there that I really liked. I had Mika centering Kreider and Lafreniere. Lafreniere would play the right wing. For the second line, I had Trocheck centering Panarin on the left wing, and Kakko on the right wing. And the reason for this, I mean, there's a few reasons, but first and foremost, the Rangers, when you look at the team they were at the end of last season, at the end of the playoff run, and you compare it to now, they actually lost three out of their top six forwards to free agency. And so now you have to replace them. And for me, given what Kaapo Kakko showed in the playoffs, I know he had that healthy scratch against Tampa Bay, but I thought overall he did all right for himself, and that kid line played well. Given what Alexis Lafreniere did in the playoffs, and given the fact that, Kakko number 2 former overall pick, Alexis Lafreniere number 1 overall pick, Kakko is going into year 4, if you can believe that. Alexis Lafreniere is going into year 3. It was time to roll with the kids. It was time to throw them into a bigger role for this team and basically say sink or swim. It's your job to lose. Obviously, the Rangers can always make adjustments if they need to, but to me, the Rangers' best chances of catching lightning in a bottle this season, as far as filling out the top six is concerned, and replacing the Stromes and the Kops and the Vetranos, was you put Lafreniere and you put Kakko into the top six. And then, of course, Vincent Trocheck's going to be there as well. He came over, obviously, as a free agent in the offseason. The Rangers do not go that road, and I'm not really agreeing with it, basically for all the reasons that I just said there, but to build on that, I gave you the reasons why I would like to see Lafreniere and Kakko in the top six. To kind of look at the two players that are there instead of them, you got Blais and Kravtsov. With Sammy Blais, he's going to be on the top line. Sammy Blais has a grand total of 39 points in 133 games. And I realize points are not everything. Sammy Blais brings some physicality. I mean, he tends to really rack up a lot of hits. He did so in the 14 games that he played for the Rangers this past season. And maybe there is some upside. I think he's got like a sneaky underrated shot, but bottom line, this guy has never been known as a scoring juggernaut, and you would like guys with scoring prowess in your top six for the most part. And you look at Sammy Blais, just the total package, his whole career, he's never played more than 40 games in an NHL regular season. 14 games with the Rangers this past year, small sample size, but he had 0 goals and 4 assists. And then that was also despite the fact that he played with Mika and Kreider for the final 3 games of the season. And again, it's just 3 games, and it's interesting that, he got that opportunity. I had actually kind of forgotten that Blais played with Mika and Kreider toward the tail end of his season there. But yeah, he was there with them for a little while. We'll see how that goes. And then, for the second line, we've got Kravtsov with Panarin and Trocheck, and I'm not the biggest fan of this either. I think there's a certain amount of fans fans are kind of split on this. There's people that are some serious Vitali Kravtsov truthers, and they think that this is going to be a good fit, and you can take advantage of his ability by putting him with Artemi Panarin, and to a lesser extent, Vincent Trocheck as well. But then there's also some fans that I think kind of see this the way that I do, and that's that, we're kind of the Rangers are kind of just handing this to Vitali Kravtsov. And this is the guy, and again, the Rangers themselves are not blameless, but this is the guy who essentially quit on the team last year. He was sent down to the minors to begin the season, threw a fit, ends up going back, across seas to play in the KHL, and we didn't see him again for the rest of the season. Now, it appears that the relationship is somewhat improved. I mean, obviously he's back here and he's getting a chance. Obviously he's getting a chance. They've got him penciled in for the top 6 here, but there's just something about, going with Sammy Blais, who, again, has never played more than 40 games, is not exactly a scoring juggernaut. He's a good guy. I don't think, there's any character issues there. And then also going with Vitali Kravtsov, who there are at least some character issues. You're going to go with those 2 players instead of Alexis Lafreniere and Kaapo Kakko, the guys that you took number 1 and number 2 overall in drafts, and who seem to have a heck of a lot more upside than either. Kravtsov could still be a good player, but you get what I'm saying here. Kakko and Lafreniere, they were down in the trenches. They were here with this team this past season, and I think that they've earned the right to, have the opportunity to take on a bigger role. The one thing that I do want to mention with Alexis Lafreniere is that, I'm sure the thing that might give the Rangers some pause and maybe even gives some of the listeners some pause here is that Alexis Lafreniere, if he was to be on the top line with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, it would mean he would have to move from left wing to right wing. I don't think you're going to move Kreider based off the season that he just had. Somebody scores 52 goals. I don't think you change their position going into the following season. But we saw Lafreniere play with them for a stretch of about, 7 or 8 games this past year, and then they made a switch where Lafreniere dropped down to the third line and Vetrano took his spot on the top line. But, Lafreniere, that was one of his best stretches that we've seen him play as a member of this team. And I think it was because he was taking advantage of the fact that he was out there with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, 2 pretty darn good hockey players, and it didn't really matter that he was on the right wing. So that kind of alleviated my concerns as far as Lafreniere playing on the right wing. But instead, he'll start the season on the third line, or so it would seem. Things can change between now and opening night, but he's going to be on the left wing. And just to get back to Vitali Kravtsov for a second ago, this is what Gallant had to say about the situation. He's made a big effort to come in here and work hard and do the things that we wanted for our team. I talked to him a little bit about a month ago, and I just basically said to him, there's an opportunity here. We want you to be a good player on our team, but you've got to take it. We're not going to give you nothing. You've seen how our team played last year. That's what we expect from every player. The reports I got from everybody around here have been real positive. And, he talks about not just giving him the opportunity. He's kind of just giving him the opportunity here. Like I said, I just would have liked to have seen Alexis Lafreniere and Kaapo Kakko get the first crack at the top 6 roles. Seems like that's not going to be the case, but obviously everything is very much subject to change. There is some good news coming out of this, and that is that we get some more kid line. You guys watched the playoffs last year just like I did. You know how good that kid line was on certain nights, how well they clicked together, how much time they spent in the offensive zone, how many scoring chances they created, how electric they were on certain nights. They were just ready to go. And I can live with the kid line staying together and Kakko and Lafreniere not being in the top 6 if this line gets significant playing time. But I don't want to see a situation where, we're 5, 6, 7, 8 games into the season and Blais and Kravtsov are averaging, 17 minutes a night, and Kakko and Lafreniere are averaging 12 minutes a night or less. That does not work for me at all. As long as Kakko and Lafreniere, and I guess Hedl too, since they're going to be the kid line, as long as they're out there and they're getting their opportunities and they're getting rewarded for playing well, if they indeed are playing well, then I can at least live with this. I can see the logic from Gallant. It's not what I would have done, but if he wants to see more of the kid line and he thinks that he's got something there, then so be it. I'm willing to, at least give it a chance. We'll see how the whole thing shakes out. Again, Wouldn't have been my choice, but Gallant knows quite a bit more about hockey than I do, and obviously he did a lot of good things this past season, and I guess he wants more kid line, and that's not the worst thing in the world, I suppose. I think it's also important to keep in mind for all of us that nothing here is set in stone. Gallant even hinted that was the case. The line combinations on the first day of camp are not necessarily going to be exactly the same through the preseason, the regular season, and the playoffs, and all that. So I would say, if you're not thrilled about these line combos, just hang tight. Let's give it a chance to see how it all shakes out. Again, it wasn't my top choice, but I'm willing to at least see how the whole thing, plays out for this team. Something else that I thought was kind of interesting that Gallant talked about is the bottom defense pairing. And this is a situation we're going to be tracking throughout, the entire preseason and into the season. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. We're also going to get into some injury updates on Sammy Blais and Barclay Goodrow, and also some highlights from the scrimmage that happened just a little bit earlier today here. And we will do all that in just a second. But first, just want to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, just wanted to thank you guys for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. All right, so like I said, we're going to go ahead and get to notes from the scrimmage in just a second here. Want to call some attention to the position battle for the sixth and final defenseman spot. That's kind of, we're almost in a similar situation to where we were last year in training camp, where it looks like the top 5 defenseman spots are settled, and you're just looking at, a battle for one open spot. Gerard Gallant basically confirmed as much. With Braden Schneider, I didn't want to say 100% that he would be out there on opening night. I just had the feeling, this coaching staff, and not just this coaching staff, there's a lot of coaching staffs that would do things this way, but they would say he's got to go out there and earn it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You guys know, just typical coach talk. But the smart money was always on Braden Schneider certainly being out there on opening night. I thought he certainly played well enough down the stretch this past season. I thought he did a nice job in the playoffs as well, especially considering, he's 20 years old, making his first Stanley Cup playoff appearance. So Schneider was always pretty close to being a lock, and Gallant basically confirmed as much that, yes, he will be out there. And so basically, you're down to just one spot, and this is what Gallant had to say about it regarding the bottom D pairing. I don't know. Training camp will decide that. Schneider is going to be there. You know that. The top 5 is there. And then there's a fight for that spot. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, obviously, these are big moments for, both Zach Jones as well as Matthew Robertson and anybody else who might be, gunning for that 6th and final spot. I guess we got to throw Libor Hayek in there because it sounds like, he's played a pretty prominent role thus far. I mean, it's early in training camp here, obviously, but we'll see how the whole thing shakes out there. As far as, did want to do some injury updates as well before we turn our attention to the scrimmage itself. Gerard Gallant mentioned that they're going to take things very slow with Barclay Goodrow. They're basically just going to exercise caution, and, that's probably the best way to go. I mean, obviously, he broke his ankle during the playoffs in this last run, so he's going to practice, but he's not going to participate in the scrimmages, at least in the first few days here. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he misses a little bit of the preseason as well. Goodrow, he's not some rookie who's fighting for a roster spot. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing, and the Rangers have 4 preseason games in just 5 days, beginning on Monday. All 4 of those games start at 7 o'clock. For anybody who might be wondering, you got Monday, home against the Islanders, Tuesday in Boston, Thursday, home against the Devils, and Friday, away against the Devils. But as far as Sammy Blais is concerned, obviously he's somebody that tore his ACL. We don't even have to get into the details. I'm just tired of even talking about that, frankly, but he was taken on a dirty play. We all know what happened. And he missed the entire season this past year, was given, I believe it was a 6 to 8 month timetable. And, in my mind, I kind of kept open the possibility and the idea that, the Rangers, if they get into the playoffs and they go on a little bit of a run, it's possible that, 6 months could be up. And maybe Sammy Blais could even get back out there. And during the Rangers postseason run, you start to hear his name a little bit more often, and, you would see him in a non-contact jersey at practice. His name was back in circulation, so to speak, but obviously he never got back out there. Would have been interesting to see if he would have eventually been able to suit up had the Rangers made it to the Stanley Cup final. Would have been a heck of a story. Would have been a heck of a story if he got back in there against Tampa Bay. Just was not meant to be. But as far as, this season is concerned with Sammy Blais, the Rangers have talked about how they want to, gradually ease Barclay Goodrow back in, but there's not going to be any restrictions on Sammy Blais. He had the ACL surgery, and this is what Gallant had to say about Blais. Sammy is 100%. We got good news on him about a month ago. Everything is good. He looks lean. He's skated. He's worked out. He's tired of doing that, and he's ready to play hockey. And yeah, from our perspective, it's like, oh man, can Sammy Blais come back, and what can he bring to the table, and would he be in the lineup, in the middle of that Stanley Cup playoff run? Would he crack the lineup? What line would he be with? Just for Sammy Blais himself, though, the individual, it's easy to forget as a fan sometimes that, he's got to go through all this rehab and all this stuff, and he can't be out there. That's got to be tough, and obviously, he's done a lot of skating and done a lot of working out, and I'm sure he's ready to hit the ground running this season, so definitely looking forward to seeing what Sammy Blais could do. Like I said, he would not be my choice to be the top-line right winger, but if that's how they start, let's all give him a chance. I'm willing, like I said, to at least give the whole thing a chance. And either way, Sammy Blais, a tough, physical forward, sets a tone for this team, and I think he'll continue to do that. You don't get a nickname like Sammy the Bull if you're not somebody that's out there playing physical hockey. So, definitely looking forward to that. And it's good news, obviously, that he's no longer restricted as far as the injury that he sustained this past season. In just a second, we are going to turn our attention to the Rangers scrimmage. I'm just going to kind of go through some highlights here, and, I'm going to do the best I can. I mean, obviously, I'm not at this practice. I'm not really able to watch this scrimmage. It'd be great if the Rangers would stream these scrimmages, stream these practices, but they don't, so we can't watch them live. I don't really know what else to say about it, but I'm going to do the best I can to piece it together from, videos that, various reporters post on Twitter, as well as, quotes from players and just reporters talking about certain highlights that happen in the game. We're going to do our best with it and, just kind of share my opinion on certain things that were happening at the scrimmage a little bit earlier here today on Thursday, and we will do all of that in just a second. All right, so let's turn our attention to this Rangers scrimmage here on Thursday morning. At first, I should probably explain how this whole thing is going to work for the Rangers over the next 3 days of training camp. So basically, the Rangers have been broken up into 3 groups or 3 teams, whatever you want to call it. You got Group A, Group B, and Group C. And for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, what's going to happen on all 3 of those days is 2 of these groups will scrimmage each other. And then the third group will practice after that, and it's going to rotate. So today was Group A against Group B, and then Group C had its own practice by itself. Tomorrow will be different. Maybe you get Group A against Group C, and then Group B practice. It doesn't really matter what order, but you get the idea. It sounds like every group will have 2 scrimmages and 1, isolated practice. This is what Gallant had to say about that whole setup. After 3 days, once the exhibition games start, you're going to see different people at different spots. So there you have it. I mean, anybody that's, a little bit too worked up about the line combinations, just let it play out and let's see how everything goes. We've got training camp still ahead of us and 6 preseason games ahead of us, and then we'll see how everything goes in the regular season. As far as some highlights from the scrimmage, though, Group A against Group B, you had Panarin nearly setting up Vitali Kravtsov for a goal. So for anybody that's into the idea of Kravtsov playing with Panarin and Trocheck, I suppose you get a point for that. Panarin, it sounds like nice cross-ice pass for Kravtsov, and Kravtsov went for the tip-in, sent it just wide. Brandon Hoffman actually scored the first goal of camp, which is very, very interesting to me. He's somebody I'm going to be watching very closely, throughout pretty much everything that happens over the next couple days and weeks here, because Brandon Hoffman, like we talked about, he lit up the OHL last season, just put up video game-like numbers with the Flint Firebirds, and there's not really a whole lot left for him to do, but it's either OHL or NHL. There's no AHL for Brandon Hoffman, so he's going to need a big-time camp and a big-time preseason showing if he's going to have any chance of cracking the Rangers opening night roster. We'll see how it goes. He's got a chance. The Rangers have shown if you show that you're ready, they will take that leap of faith, and they'll give you a little bit of trial by fire. So I'm very, very curious to see how everything shakes out with Brandon Hoffman. And look, everything he does, if he wants to make this Ranger team, which I'm sure he does, everything he does between now and opening night when the roster is finalized, going to be absolutely huge. It's going to either make his case or hurt his case of being out there, because it is going to be a little bit of an uphill climb, I would think, for Brandon Hoffman to crack that opening night roster. Julien Gauthier scored the second goal of camp, which, I mean, we all knew this was going to happen, right? Brandon Hoffman, Julien Gauthier, first 2 goals of the training camp session here. Gauthier, look, he kind of seems like he's the odd man out. I still wouldn't be completely shocked if he's traded before the season starts, but, we are getting pretty close at this point. Maybe he's in a situation where he can battle for a spot on the 4th line, although I don't really see Gauthier as a 4th liner. Maybe there's a situation where, he's the healthy scratch, the 13th forward, if you will, for this Ranger team, which I suppose would be okay. But with Gauthier, I'm just at the point where I'm just ready and willing to give somebody else a chance. Obviously, it's not my decision to make, but I don't know, man. He's had opportunities over these past few seasons. This most recent one, more so than ever, just hasn't been able to take advantage, so I'm kind of at the point where I'm just looking to give somebody else a chance. Something else that happened that's noteworthy is Matthew Robertson with a pass along the boards to his right to Artemi Panarin in deep. Panarin's, pretty close to the doorstep there. He had all day, and then wristed it off the near post. And there was actually a video of that on Twitter. And, again, Robertson's another one of those guys. You got to keep an eye on him. Everything he does is going to be under a microscope because it's him and Zach Jones. Hopefully, it's either him or Zach Jones. I'm trying to speak this into existence. Hopefully, it's either Matthew Robertson or Zach Jones as the 6th defenseman on opening night. I don't want Libor Hayek out there. I certainly don't want Jared Tenorti out there. And the new guy, Bartkowski, the guy on the PTO, I don't want him out there either. So, but yeah, give me Robertson or Jones, and I'm just hoping for a big training camp for both of them, and I hope one of them, eventually seizes that 6th and final spot. We also had Adam Sikora scored a goal on a tip-in in front of Igor Shesterkin, and we got to talk about this. There were too many collisions with Igor Shesterkin during this training camp session here today. Sikora, it sounds like, and I think this was after he had scored the goal, he made contact with Igor Shesterkin, and the whole bench kind of got on him, and there was like a big hey, and apparently Sikora tapped himself on the chest, kind of signaling, that's my bad, apologizing for it, which is good. But, you don't want to see Igor Shesterkin getting... it doesn't sound like he bowled him over. I haven't seen a video of this play with Sikora and Igor, but you don't really want to see Igor Shesterkin absorbing really any contact from any of his teammates during the first scrimmage of training camp. Not ideal. And then just after this, it sounds like, he got crashed into. Brodzinski and Tenorti were kind of, I guess, engaged, and, they collided with Igor Shesterkin, and Igor went down, came up limping a little bit. Apparently, Igor slammed his stick on the glass, was frustrated, and, was checked out by the trainers briefly, but, he stayed in to finish the scrimmage, or at least his portion of the scrimmage, so that's obviously good to hear. That if there was any reason for concern whatsoever, and in fact, Gallant, just a second ago, I'm seeing on Twitter, confirmed that Igor is completely fine. Though, if there was any concern about him being hurt, they would have taken him off the ice in about 2 seconds. So the fact that he stayed out there should alleviate the concerns of Ranger fans. But this can't be happening, man. Johnny Brodzinski and Jared Tenorti, look, they're both facing a major uphill battle to make this team. They got to try something, and I'm sure they're competing hard against each other out there, but you cannot have Igor Shesterkin getting knocked to the ice by his own guys on the first day of scrimmaging each other. That's just no good. I don't think I need to explain why. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. Igor Shesterkin finished his first half of the scrimmage. Yaroslav Halak was in the other goal, and then they were replaced in the second half, respectively, by Dylan Garand and Oscar Lindbaum. So that was the plan all along. It wasn't because Igor Shesterkin was hurt and they had to get him off the ice. So again, everybody should rest easy. Again, Gerard Gallant confirmed as much after the practice. As far as some other notes, they had Panarin, Trocheck, and Kravtsov. They were matched up against Kreider, Zibanejad, and Blais for a good chunk of the scrimmage, and it sounds like for the most part, Panarin, Trocheck, and Kravtsov had the advantage. They spent more time in the offensive zone, more sustained, pressure than the Kreider, Zibanejad, and Blais line. It's always kind of interesting talking about this during training camp because you like to hear that, certain Rangers are doing well. But a lot of times, if certain Rangers are doing well, if there's a line that's excelling, it's oftentimes at the expense of a different line. So, yeah, it's kind of a little bit of give and take, I suppose. If you're big Kravtsov fan and want to see him with Panarin and Trocheck, then this seems like a step in the right direction, because it sounds like that line more than held its own and, in fact, actually outplayed Kreider, Mika, and Blais when those two lines were on the ice against each other. They also did a little bit of 3-on-3 action. You had Panarin, Trocheck, and Trouba against Kreider, Mika, and Fox. And when you read those names, it would seem like those are guys that will be pretty likely to be out there in overtime 3-on-3 periods. Trouba, 3-on-3, I like Trouba, but his lack of speed makes me a little nervous 3-on-3 overtime. I mean, he's a good enough defenseman that he can probably make up for it, but yeah, I mean, speed isn't everything, but I always like 3-on-3 overtime. I want guys out there that are fast, because there's just so much open ice, so much real estate, so much room to maneuver, and if you can't hit the Jets, you might struggle to keep up at least a little bit. So Trouba 3-on-3 overtime isn't ideal for me, but you know what? He's a good defenseman. He'll figure it out. Something else that happened, Dylan Garand with a really nice save on Mika Zibanejad. The scrimmage was tied at 3-3 when he did that. And this per our friend Vince Percogliano, he told the media members that the player that he was most looking to face at training camp, I'm talking about Dylan Garand here, was Mika Zibanejad. So he got to make a save on the guy that he wanted to face. And that was pretty much it as far as the scrimmage is concerned, as far as, the highlights, and I suppose a couple of scary moments there with Igor Shesterkin. But Group C was on the ice, and, they had, for Group C, they had a fourth line of Jimmy Vesey, Gustav Friedel, and Dryden Hunt. That was during the Group C practice, but during the scrimmage, they had Carpenter and Reeves as part of the scrimmage, and it sounds like, as far as the fourth line is concerned, because I didn't talk about the fourth line earlier, it sounds like roles are very, very much up for grabs. Now, if the Rangers stick with the top 9 that I talked about earlier in today's episode, then certainly one of the spots on the fourth line will be filled by Barclay Goodrow. Which line spot will he take? We don't know, because Goodrow plays left wing, he plays center, he plays right wing, he can do it all. So Goodrow would be one of the 3 guys on the fourth line, but everybody else I just mentioned there, again, Vesey, Riedel, Hunt, Carpenter, Reeves, all those guys are in the mix, and it sounds like, the competition is on, and playing time could be up for grabs there. You could even throw guys like Will Cooley and Brian Hoffman into the mix there as well. Maybe one of them makes the team. We'll see. But I love it. I love the fact that, they're preaching competition, and if you want a spot on that fourth line, you got to go out and make it happen throughout training camp here, and I assume also into the preseason as well. Something else of note is that during Group C's practice here, you had Braden Schneider paired with Libor Hajek. Let's all just take a second here. Yeah. So, again, I'm not thrilled with the idea of Libor Hajek opening the season with Braden Schneider on that third pairing. Again, I cannot stress this enough. I want either Zach Jones or Matthew Robertson. And I probably shouldn't read too much into this, but you hear that, and it's just like, God, does that mean that Libor Hajek has the inside track? It's possible. It's also possible that I'm really jumping into conclusions there. And, like Gallant was saying, it sounds like they're going to mix it up a little bit, going forward throughout the camp, throughout the preseason. But wouldn't have been my pick, Libor Hajek, to start the training camp here with Braden Schneider. It sounds like also Zach Jones was paired with Andy Welinski. So I would like to see, again, either Jones or Robertson out there with Schneider, start building that chemistry. Robertson and Schneider already have chemistry, it sounds like, from their time with the Hartford Wolfpack. They were the top pairing there. So, yep, I mean, I suppose the competition is on, but I could have done without Libor Hajek playing with Braden Schneider in the first training camp period. It's not the end of the world. Like we said, there's plenty of time to go between now and the regular season, but yeah, not my top choice, that is for sure. But I figure we can pretty much call it there for today. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com, and definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely make sure to subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. In our next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about whatever happens in the training camp and the scrimmages and all that good stuff. And we're also going to take a look ahead to Monday's preseason opener against the New York Islanders. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On Experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast.